Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I'm D.
I'm D.
What's that?
I'm D. I want to
You're
be
not
D.
D. You're
I want to
G.
be D tonight.
Well, I can think of some words that start with D that you might be, but you are G. That's G. I'm D. This is the GD Report. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing well. It's been another busy week in politics, and we've got some great topics tonight. Let's start off by talking about some startling news that came out of the New York Times and Washington Post reporting on Thursday of this week, where there was some reporting earlier in the week talking about how the Trump administration through the Department of Justice had subpoenaed reporters' records, wanting to know their sources.
And New York Times, Washington Post.
Yeah, and it was thought to be illegal. Even a CNN reporter, I believe Barbara Starr from CNN, and pretty glaringly illegal. Some of the things they were trying to do with that. But it came out Thursday that not only had they done that with reporters, but they had also secretly subpoenaed and then had the court issue gag orders so that the phone providers could not talk about the subpoenas, but they'd subpoenaed members of Congress, particularly members of the House, I believe, Judiciary Committee. Adam Schiff was one from California, and Eric Swalwell. Their phone records, their data usage were subpoenaed, along with staff members of theirs, and in some cases, even their children's phone records.
Right. That's why you got to use that DuckDuck.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That's why you got to use that DuckDuckGo browser.
Yeah, I mean, pretty scary, and probably also some of the impetus for the latest iOS update from Apple about your data and your privacy and things like that. But pretty scary times that we were living in when we had an administration violating not only the Constitution and the law, but the clear separation of powers to be able to subpoena the records of those people who were leading investigations against them.
Didn't Nixon try the same sort of thing?
He tried, but at the time, obviously, we didn't have cell phones and didn't have computers in the personal computer nature that we had. But definitely tried to steal personal records, and in some cases, if they had received counseling and those kinds of things. But when we talked about this last fall, this type of things during the election, there was a lot of people on the other side that said, "Oh, that's hyperbole," and "Oh, the left is just overreacting," and they blame everything on Donald Trump, and he wouldn't do anything like that. Well, it's clear right now. And the question, which we've asked a million times, has to be, at what point is it too far across the line that Donald Trump went in his administration for the Republican Party?
Right. I think his diehard supporters would say there's no limit.
I agree.
He's got supporters, and we talked about this last time, that called for a Myanmar-style coup where they're executing people in the head just right off the street
for opinion pieces, and they're jailing reporters and everything like that. So yeah, absolutely, and it's pretty much noted by the yawns that congressional Republicans greeted these reports with. They said nothing about it. They have no real concern or anything like that. Can you imagine? I mean, and again, I'm going to talk about what I've talked about a million times on this podcast and in other places: the projection of the Republican Party. What did Trump say about Obama? Since the 2016 election, what did he say about Obama? Oh, they wiretapped my records at Trump Tower. They were getting into my personal information. And the whole time he was doing it to members of Congress. So he was projecting what he did on President Obama, which is his basic MO.
Hold on, Dutchie. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. And what did Barr and Jeff Sessions, were they involved?
Both have denied that they knew anything about it. And Barr issued a statement, which is pretty rare for him, that he normally just ignores we lost the G-man, but normally William Barr just ignores any kind of statement or anything like that of what's happening. And he ended up issuing a statement where he said he knew nothing about it. So he acknowledged that that it was an issue by responding to it. And I guess we should know that he takes it serious that he issued a statement about it.
Right. Well, can't you go to jail for something like that?
Absolutely, you can.
And so what's going on about it now? Is the DOJ?
Well, the Senate committee has Senator Durbin from Illinois and Senator Schumer have they've said that they're going to ask both Sessions and Barr to testify before Senate Judiciary Committee, and if they refuse to voluntarily appear, they're going to issue subpoenas for them. Now, question's going to come just like on everything else. Are they going to have the votes to be able to issue subpoenas? Because the Republicans going to just block it.
Well, the Democrats control that panel, right?
I think it's 50-50.
It's the judiciary, right?
Yeah, some of the major committees are split 50-50 evenly. So but if that happens, the House still has the ability to issue subpoenas, and they will, and they'll subpoena them. And I will predict that Barr and Sessions will both refuse to appear, be found in contempt of Congress, and then it comes down to what at that point, what does
It's 11 to 11.
What does Congress want to do at that point?
Right. So there's some of your favorite senators are on the Judiciary Committee. So the ranking member is Chuck Grassley.
Yeah.
And then
Mr. Excitement.
Then there's the mouth of the South, Mr. Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, Lady G.
The esteemed John Cornyn from Texas.
Yeah, he never met a fascist he didn't like.
Right. Michael Lee from Utah. And my favorite senator from my home state, Ted, grandpa from the Munsters Cruise.
Raphael.
Yep, Cancun Cruise. Ben Sass. Now, Sass might have enough sass within him to vote with the Democrats, especially because he hates Trump.
As there's potential, there's potential there. We'll see.
Mr. Ethics, Josh Hawley.
Oh,
Tom Cotton. It's like all the Southern senators on this thing.
That's a greatest hits of the great constitutional minds of the right wing.
Right. John Kennedy, Tom Tillis, and Marsha Blackburn.
Wow.
They're like all from the South.
What an impressive group. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. Here's my thing on this as well is, it's been documented that some of the people who were involved in this are still working at the Department of Justice.
Right.
And so I think Merrick Garland's he's already kind of hit a fork in the road here where he's going to have to choose how he moves forward on some of these things, because he's already talking about how he's going to defend Trump's position in the defamation suit in the sexual harassment case against him, because the suit was filed while Trump was president. And there's all these things where he's trying to take this moral high ground of the Department of Justice, but he's going to have to make some choices. And if he continues to employ these people that did these things, I don't know, man. That's going to leave me with not much confidence in him as Attorney General.
Well, you definitely need somebody, at least I think you need somebody with a set of cojones that's going to come in and say, you broke the law. I don't care what side you're on. You're going to jail.
Yeah,
and
I don't care.
If you don't go to jail, it won't be because I didn't try my damnedest to get you there.
I agree. So we shall see. We'll follow this one closely. All right. What's our next topic?
Our next topic is, I'm glad you asked, is takes us over to the great state of North Carolina and the reemergence, just like the cicadas, of Mr. Trump.
Mr. Trump made his appearance last week. Why don't you tell us what happened?
Well, he came out, he spoke to the Republican state convention, and some eagle eye internet liberals basically identified the fact that Mr. Trump wasn't wearing any pants with a zipper. And so all sorts of speculation is shot up about why he would be wearing these pants. Does he have Depends on? And you can watch the video. We'll put a link up to it at the end of our, at the bottom of the in the comment section, so you can click on it. But I mean, it's very obvious the guy's not wearing pants with a zipper. And so why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward that that's what happened. And there was debate originally. There's some people that thought he had his pants on backwards originally.
Right. Oh yeah.
And you put that together with the low energy nature of the way he spoke, the way his cadence wasn't very strong. He seems like he's failing rapidly to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we talked in the pregame tailgate show, there's definitely something wrong with the guy. So whether it's early onset Alzheimer's or just dementia or, something else. But
he just doesn't take care of his health. I mean, the diet he has, the lack of exercise, the way he's just sitting around feeling sorry for himself. And
I'll tell you this, folks. If you want to play the stock market, now's a good time to get in with McDonald's, and you better sell it the day he dies because it's going to drop a lot.
It's a good one. Yeah, but I mean, you look at the way the guy, from all reports, he's sitting around and just still bemoaning about the election and telling people he's going to be reinstalled in August. I mean, he's living in a fantasy land, and it can't help when he has health issues as well.
Well, my mother-in-law brought up a good point. What's going to happen when September 1 rolls around and he's not back in office? Are we going to have another insurrection like we had before? Is this basically just a rallying cry to those totally right-wing zealots that want to bring guns and things into the equation? I mean,
well, at that point, it reminds me of the end time prophecies where you had those right-wing preachers that would always say the end of the world is going to be, and they would name a date.
Right.
They'd say, I've deciphered the book of Revelation, and it's going to be September the 6th, 2020. And then September the 6th, 2020 comes and goes. And they go, well, the calculation was wrong. Now it's October 13th, 2022 to buy themselves some time to raise more money.
Right.
So the whole thing reminds me of that, because they're basically carnival barkers trying to get people to give them money.
Yeah. Well, that's like Oral Roberts. He basically said our law school's broke. God told me I need to raise 25 million or we're going to have to shut it down, and we need these lawyers that are on our side, and blah, blah, blah. It turns out the law school was flush with money, and they never used a cent of the 25 million for the law school. So
we also said God told him that if he didn't raise the money, he was going to take him home. And
some of us were rooting for that.
Yeah, he didn't tell people that by taking him home, he meant to the big mansion on Riverside Drive in Tulsa.
Right.
So so we'll see, but definitely back on the main stage, or we should say he never left. I mean, it's Trump's party now. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. It is the Republican Party has sold out completely to Donald Trump, and I don't think.
Not totally. I mean, we just had is it Richard Shelby who's retiring in Alabama?
Yeah.
I mean, he just named his successor, the person he's going to endorse, and it was different from the guy Trump endorsed. So we'll see in Alabama who, or actually I should say woman, because it's a woman, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there are some pockets of resistance. How strong it's going to be, we'll see. But I think they're going to.
I don't think an endorsement like that though is is the telltale signs that they're taking the party back.
Well, it's got to start somewhere, right? I mean, Liz Cheney was trying to take it back and they canned her. So I think there's gonna be a day when they apologize, maybe not in front of the cameras, but behind the scenes to Liz Cheney, and they put her back in her leadership position or even Speaker of the House. Or
That's going to be several years down the road.
yeah. So unfortunately, I think you're correct about that.
Yeah. Speaking of down south, and speaking about senators who hopefully will be retiring, but we've got a Senate election in the Sunshine State of Florida, where your old friend Marco Rubio is running for re-election, also known as Little Marco, monikered by Donald Trump that way. He just drew a top tier opponent in his election.
Right.
You want to tell the folks who he drew?
Yeah, he drew Val Demings. But let me say this. Marco Rubio is going to be tough to beat because of the Hispanic population in South Florida. I mean, they love the guy.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's going to be as tough to beat as people think, because I think if Val Demings knows the state well, I think she knows she's going to have to get active in the Hispanic community early. And I think there's an opportunity there because, you can play a lot of different cards against Marco Rubio. And one of them is the fact that he is a total political opportunist. When he thought he could be the Republican nominee, he said all that stuff about Trump and how terrible Trump was, and then suddenly he got in line behind Trump.
Lindsey Graham.
Yep, exactly. The other thing is, it's going to be pretty hard for him to. He issued a statement this week. It said, no matter who wins the Democratic primary, his opponent's going to be a far left wing leftist who opposes the police. And it's going to be pretty hard to paint Val Demings that way, considering that she's the former chief of police from Orlando.
Right.
And the fact that she's had a really strong House record. She was one of the people that led the impeachment trial and did a fantastic job with that. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough race. Rubio it won't either side. It won't be a 10-point win either way.
Right.
It's going to be one, 2, or 3 points somewhere in there. But I think the Democrats got the best candidate they could get of people that that were considering running, and I think she's gonna give him all he wants and then some.
Right. They could have gotten Shaq. I think he lives in Florida now.
Yeah, I'm talking about realistic candidates.
Right. It's funny. I don't know if there's any empirical data to support this, but from what I've seen, there's a lot of Republicans moving from states like California and Colorado that are pretty much firmly in the blue column, and they're heading to Florida. So we may see that state be even more red, which would make Rubio even harder to beat. But the last governor race, the mayor of Tallahassee ran against DeSantis, and DeSantis barely won that thing.
Right. Yeah. It was not a landslide.
Yeah. And that was before all the negative publicity came out against the mayor. But so yeah, you get a candidate like Val Demings, she might be able to convince enough Republicans to come over and vote for her because they're sick of Rubio. But I still think it's going to be a tough win. The Democrats are going to have to identify some places like that. I don't think Texas is one of them. I don't think Texas has a race up either this year.
Gubernatorial race.
Yeah. But they need to identify some states where they can knock off a senator or two so they can get past this squeaky thin margin where they're depending on Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema to do the right thing, because they've shown they won't.
Yeah, well, I think they've identified those with Pennsylvania, North Carolina.
Who are they running in North Carolina? I haven't seen that.
There's a couple of state senators. I'm not seeing, they've not finalized anybody yet.
Right.
But, and then, Pennsylvania, they've got a top tier Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman's running. He's going to
Yeah.
be an awesome candidate. And then, in Ohio, they've identified that too. They got Tim Ryan running.
Right. Okay.
And so
Yeah,
there's a couple of really nice pickup opportunities there. There's still a chance Wisconsin could be a pickup as well. Ron John is getting crazier by the day.
Right. Now, has he already announced that he's not going to run?
No, he hasn't announced either way yet. I think he's raising money, but who knows?
Well, if he doesn't run, he just makes it harder for the Republican candidate.
Right. And then Chuck Grassley hasn't announced whether he's going to run in Iowa or not.
I thought he had. I thought he said he wasn't.
And I've not seen anything that said that.
Yeah.
So there's some opportunities there for some pickups. So Alabama, they'd have to convince Nick Saban to quit the Alabama head coaching job and run to win that one.
Right. Well, they could.
Never know. So anyway, but big win for Democrats getting Val Demings to run for that seat in Florida.
Right.
All right. What's next?
Let's talk about my favorite topic. I totally supported the 4.1 trillion plan that Biden put forth, and that's infrastructure, which I think our country desperately needs in a lot of areas. So if I were in Mr. Biden's shoes, I would put forth a package that include roads and bridges, internet. I would build a water pipeline from the East Coast to the West Coast, because the East Coast gets rain in buckets, and a lot, there's flooding on the East Coast that, you could set up a means to collect all that water and alleviate the flooding that occurs every year, and ship it out to the West, which is in major drought. I don't know if people know this or not, but the California farmers, California, Nevada, and Arizona farmers have already said there's a good chance 80% of their crops this year will not come to fruition.
Yeah.
So that's things like grapes. Grapes make wine. There's tomatoes, lettuce.
Yeah, Lake Mead outside of Las Vegas is at the lowest level it's ever been.
Yeah, and that includes when they first started filling it.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you live in the West, that water rights are a huge issue. Colorado, which is where most people think, well, we know the water originates because we get snow on all these 14,000 peaks. But for almost 100 years, Colorado sent water down to places like Phoenix and Los Angeles and Las Vegas. And while Colorado residents were on restrictions where we could water only 2 times a week, which just infuriated me, you'd travel to Vegas and they're running water out the wazoo. California is just watering their golf courses like crazy, and everything's all nice and green. And you come back home and your yard's dying because you can only water twice a week. And it just infuriated people. Well, when the compact ran out and it's trying to be negotiated now, Colorado basically said, we're not sending you that much water anymore. We're going to take care of our own citizens. So now my yard's fairly green. We can still only water 4 times a week, or at least you're supposed to. And we're not sending as much down. And so now there's this big controversy. One thing I did see was that they were going to open up Blue Mesa, which is Colorado's largest lake, and they were going to send some water down to it into Lake Powell, so that Lake Powell could then act as a backstop to Lake Mead. But infrastructure is vital, and I think Biden's got a couple of other ideas about what constitutes infrastructure, whereas the Republicans have this narrow vision of, we just want it to be roads and bridges. That's infrastructure.
The Republicans have a 1950s version of infrastructure.
Yeah,
it's like nothing ever changed. Like, we don't have an internet. We don't have the need for. I mean, the last year has shown us the need for broadband connectivity in across the country. I mean, that should be considered almost a right now with the way our economy is connected via broadband. So basically, a couple things. Number one, I'm going to talk about your West Coast water plan. Number one is, why should we support you guys on the West Coast? You guys should just pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, is what I say.
Right. Well, to that I would say,
sounds very socialist to me.
to that I would say you guys in the Midwest ought to remember 2 words: Dust Bowl. Before
We haven't had one of those in a long time, so we're fine.
Right.
But
So before we go further, though, let me throw this out. Who invented the internet?
the United States military.
Right. The United States did. Right. So where would you think the U.S. would rank on the chart of availability of nations?
I would say probably about 40th.
Well, you're close. We are 27th.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise. I mean, we get nice things and then we don't want to share it with other people. We've talked about this before. We have a country club mentality when it comes to these things, and it holds us back from an economic standpoint. But to your water point, there's a lot of historians, and that when they read history and they talk about the future, that they've determined that the next major world war will be about water.
Oh yeah, I firmly believe that.
Because of the way that we're facing shortages. We see disputes between Oklahoma and Texas for water rights. We see it all over the place. And it's funny to me, and we didn't have this as a topic, and we should be celebrating it tonight, but the Keystone XL pipeline, that project was abandoned by TransCanada this week because of the way the Biden administration had put restrictions on it and basically halted the project. If we can put a pipeline across our country to carry oil and fossil fuels, why can't we put a pipeline to carry water that people need?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. It just makes sense to me. You got all this rain in the south and the east, and all it does is wash off the land, right? And goes into the ocean, right? How about capturing some of that, shipping it out via pipeline,
There's ways we could there's technology where we could refurbish some of the oil processing and refineries and actually turn them into water refineries and take salt water and desalinate the water and make it drinkable. And so there's lots of things if we would just get creative, and not every time you talk about something like that, though, it's like when you talk about putting wind farm factories or solar panel factories into West Virginia. Wow, we're going to lose our coal jobs. We're going to lose our coal jobs. And the bottom line is they don't realize you're going to lose your coal jobs either way. The question is, do you have a high-paying job that replaces it?
Yeah, and everybody wants to say that Obama killed coal. Obama didn't kill coal. T. Boone Pickens did.
Yeah,
so
natural gas.
With natural gas. So all these plants are converting to natural gas because it's cheaper. I mean, it's simple economics.
We're facing an electronic chip shortage right now, which is causing problems in the car market and a lot of other electronics, but particularly in the car market, they can't put the chips in the cars to be able to run the new cars. And I think part of the infrastructure bill ought to be, let's subsidize a chip manufacturer here in the US.
Well, there's only 2 really. There's Intel and AMD. So subsidize them both and tell them to go to town.
I would subsidize a brand new one called USG chips, and I'd say, federal government, we're gonna subsidize these, and we're gonna make the profit off of it.
Right.
But that leads me back. Who would?
Taxpayers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, and guess what? Just like in Alaska, when they've got government leases and things like that on oil in Alaska, people get checks every month.
Yeah. Well, so, that program is basically broke, and the legislature voted to scale it back. So it's roughly about $3,000 a person. Yeah. And the governor basically reinstated it, overruled the legislature and said, no, we're going to send out $3,000 checks come hell or high water, despite the fact that the state's basically broke.
They love their government checks in Alaska.
And he's a Republican, so that's sound fiscal responsibility.
Which this whole thing leads me back to the Biden's infrastructure bill. He's been negotiating for the last almost month with Shelley Moore Capita from West Virginia, senator. Those negotiations were called off this week because they couldn't get to even a basic framework of what infrastructure was. Now there's a quote unquote bipartisan group, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, that are negotiating some type of infrastructure plan. Mitt Romney says, oh, my old buddy Willard, there'll be no increases in taxes. There'll be no, we're gonna restructure some of the COVID money that hasn't been spent and take that money and spend it on infrastructure and blah, 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 all this stuff. When in reality, they negotiate this thing, they're going to end up with probably the 5 Republicans who are on this group voting for it, if they get them to vote for it. They're going to go so conservative, they're probably going to lose some Democratic votes. So it's getting to a point with infrastructure where Biden's going to have to make that age-old decision of fishing or cutting bait. And I think he's going to have to cut bait and go to the American people and say, look, I tried 9 ways a Sunday to work with Republicans on this. They don't want to give you what you need. I'm going to give you what you need. We're going to pass it through reconciliation. The danger he has with that plan is whether he can get Manchin or Sinema to even vote for it under reconciliation.
Yep. Well, then didn't the parliamentarian rule he can only use reconciliation one more time?
Yeah, well, I would use it for that, and I would go big.
Yeah, well, his original plan was 4.1 trillion, which everybody that follows infrastructure, all the experts, which I am not, but I have a good idea what we need. But all the experts say, when Trump was touting a $2 trillion plan, which he never put forth, all the experts said that's a good start, but we really need 4 to 6. And the thing is, this is the kind of thing that the government can do. I mean, we built the atom bomb. We saved the world for democracy back in World War II. We can go big. We know how to go big, and we can turn our. And the other thing is, think of the jobs. I think that was part of Biden's selling point, is that this big plan is going to create big jobs, and it's going to turn the economy, back to the wild days of the 1980s when everybody had jobs and they were throwing money out of limos and all sorts of stuff. That's why the Republicans don't want it. They don't want the Democrats. This is how they think. They don't care about country. They care about Republicans. They don't want Biden to get a win the magnitude of a 4.1 trillion infrastructure plan, because it'll make them look bad. It'll entice people. This is how they think. It'll entice more people to vote Democrat. That's less Republicans, and that's bad for them.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the 1980s, because I was just going to talk about that, because that's the piece that a lot of people miss. You used to hear that after the banking and financial collapse we had in 2008. One of the big criticisms from Republicans was that the Obama recovery wasn't strong enough. It just didn't compare to the Reagan recovery after Jimmy Carter and after the late 70s. You know what the big difference was? The big difference was, even when Reagan cut taxes, which he came back and raised them after all, but when he cut taxes, they never cut government spending.
Right.
The government was there juicing the economy the whole time.
Right.
And so
now, Chris, he said government wasn't the solution. Government was the problem. So how could he get away with that?
It's very simple in 2 words. You ready for it?
Yep.
He lied. That's what they do, man. I mean, when you look at Mitch McConnell going on TV this week and saying that he doesn't see any need to have federal voting reform because it's already against the law to discriminate against people based on race. People don't get discriminated based on race. I mean, it's just a bald-faced lie.
Says the former slave owner.
Yeah,
I mean, he wasn't a slave owner, but he's from that state. So
KKK supporter.
Right.
So, anyway, yeah. So I think the next move in my mind is Biden to give a big speech to the American people and say, I've tried, I've given it every chance I could to work with them. They don't want to help you.
Right. Well, we should write that speech and send it up to them.
And say, they want to jam through a conservative justice. We're going to jam through relief for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. So,
right.
Speaking of Mr. Biden, our last topic is where the U.S. stands on the world stage. How's that going?
Yeah, President Biden is attending the G7 conference in England this week. And what they found is more than 6 in 10 residents in each of the 16 countries surveyed around the world, which includes most of our allies, 75% of them say they have confidence in Biden at the beginning of his presidency, compared to former President Donald Trump's number. You want to give a guess on what his percentage was?
28.
Man, you're very generous. 17% of people had confidence in him. 83% said they had no confidence in Trump, compared to 22% said they have no confidence in Biden. So our standing in the world, overall view of the U.S. and foreign nations continues to recover quickly and dramatically. At the end of Trump's presidency, 63% of the world had an unfavorable view of the United States, with 34% holding a positive view. Now that Biden's president, those numbers have virtually flipped, with 62% holding a favorable view of the U.S. and 36% holding an unfavorable view. So it makes a difference. It makes a difference on how we're viewed in the world, how we're viewed on the world stage, whether people take us serious or not. Now, the big question is going to be that I've heard and I've read in a lot of publications around the world is what happens after Biden. If God forbid we slingshot, if Trump runs in 2024, which I still don't think he will, but if he does, and they've rigged the elections in such a way that he were to win, I mean, it's gonna crater us in the world.
Yep. Yeah,
and we're going to be a banana republic at that point.
But I don't think, even if he does run, I don't think he'll win. I think people
I just said that.
Yeah, I think people have Trump fatigue. So I tell you what shows real leadership is something the Biden administration just did. So Trump had the opportunity to purchase 500 million doses of vaccine for his own people, and he refused to do it. Biden just purchased 500 million doses to give away to the world. That's leadership.
Absolutely.
That's how you return America. That's how you, pardon me, that's how you make America great again, by doing stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Not by putting it on a damn hat and talking about how things are rigged.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Biden's doing a great job so far, and I hope he lives long enough to run for re-election, and because I don't think if something, God forbid, were to happen to Biden now, I don't think in 3 years Miss Harris would be elected to that post. I think a Republican would take it. The Democrats would feel honor bound to run her because she's the sitting vice president or the sitting president, but I don't think they would have much luck winning. That's my own personal.
I disagree with that. I mean, I think people underestimate her all the time. She's the former senator, former attorney general, the state of California. So I think she gets underestimated a lot. But we'll cross that bridge if we have to. But I think we've talked about this on the past too. I think if they can get this infrastructure bill passed and this economy is humming like we think it's going to be in the next year, that'll just continue, because all the COVID relief bill hasn't even kicked in yet. Those child tax credits are going to start in July.
Right.
When people start getting checks, people with kids start getting checks, they're going to be like, what? And then at that point, the Democrats have to say, hey, vote for us, you keep your checks. Vote for them, they
Right.
take them away.
Right.
So, hey, great job. Great show tonight. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Drop us a line, drop us a note if there's a topic you'd like us to cover. Everybody just continue to maintain vigilance. I'll say it, I've said it before. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, please consider getting the vaccine. It's the quickest way we can get back to some sense of normalcy.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting there, but there's still about 40% of the population that hasn't been vaccinated. So, if your state doesn't have a lottery, start bugging your state legislature to institute a lottery. I know in Colorado, we've got a $5 million lottery for people to get vaccinated. So whatever it takes, let's get out there and get vaccinated.
Absolutely. Everybody take care, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.